you to Matt Tierney, who's from the Retail Investigation Support Unit, Greg Harford, representing Retail NZ, and my colleagues behind me, Nacy Chen, Vanushi Walters and Shannon Halbert. And just thank you for coming out this morning. Obviously there's a lot of interest this morning, so I'm just going to do a prepared speech. We'll have some questions. Mr Harford has got some words he'd like to say on behalf of Retail NZ, and Matt is here to answer any of the technical details you might have about the package, so thank you. So today I'm announcing a $6 million support package to help small business owners hit by retail offending, such as ramraids. The Small Retailer Crime Prevention Fund will be drawn from the proceeds of Crime Fund and be administered by police for small retailers who don't have the resources they need to protect themselves from crime. We know these ramraids and burglaries are incredibly distressing for small business owners, and that's why we've acted quickly. We've heard the concerns of small businesses being targeted, ramraids and other offending, and we are taking action. This is exactly what the Proceeds of Crime Fund was designed for, to rectify the harm caused by criminal activities. Retail stores and dairies and superettes are the two most common locations for ramraids and other types of crime. Police will now start working with 5 retailers as part of a concept trial for the fund to make sure that the particular needs of each small business are identified and met, ahead of assessments and further retailers who are most at risk. It is expected that an estimated 500 premises will likely qualify. Most will be spread across wider Auckland, but others in Hamilton, Wellington, Christchurch and other centres. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. In some cases, council consent or other approvals will be required before things like physical barriers or bollards are put in place. Police will look at a range of crime and security risks each small retailer may face, and then consider the most appropriate options, such as fog cannons, security alarms, or screens. This will build on the work that the National Retail Investigation Support Unit is already doing in partnership with Retail New Zealand. The unit is working across the country to identify high-priority repeat retail offenders who police will then hold accountable for their actions. They are also working with retail owners to offer advice on smaller things that they can do to make themselves safer, such as keeping windows clear of advertising so people can see inside the store from the street, and having lower shelves so there is a clear line of sight across the store for staff. It's important as Minister of Police that I ensure the police have the investment and resources they need to do their job in protecting our communities. On top of this announcement today, Budget 22 invested a record $562 million in police to enable progress and work on firearms reform, organised crime, police's tactical response model, and a confirmed ratio of police, so we will always have police officers available for our communities. While this fund is the most effective way we can quickly respond to ramraids, this is not a job for police alone. The South Auckland Social Wellbeing Board have stood up a cross-agency team to coordinate local agencies in response to ramraids. The team is co-located in South Auckland and has on-site representatives from Youth Justice, Care and Protection Services, Youth Aid, Bail Support Services, Kāinga Ora, MSD, MOE and from local NGOs. The cross-agency team operates in a similar way to the Family Harm multidisciplinary cross-agency team, with police referring young people to the team for intervention and support. And as I've said before, we know it takes a whole-of-society approach to address the drivers of this type of crime. Now, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Minister. Retail crime is the #1 issue facing our sector today. All retailers being impacted by it. It's always been a problem, but over the last few years it's been getting steadily worse, it's becoming steadily organised, and it's becoming increasingly aggressive and violent. And that's creating massive problems for people who work in retail. It's impacting the mental health of workers, it's impacting the well-being of owners and managers of retail stores, particularly in small businesses, but also at the larger end of retail as well. People who work in retail are increasingly living in fear about what they're going to come to at work each day. They're having to clean up the mess arising from the criminal activity that we're seeing. And ultimately, this is costing the country a fortune every year, both in terms of prevention and also in terms of prices, because the costs of crime are ultimately being passed on to consumers through a higher cost of goods. Retail in New Zealand is working very hard on behalf of the whole sector. We've got a lot of resources available to help our members and other retailers work through managing some of the crime issues, and we're really pleased that the government has come to the party with this fund to help small businesses deal with some of the challenges that they've got. And you know, the support of government, the police and everyone in the community is really necessary to help manage the situations that we're seeing, because ultimately managing the specific impacts of crime is all well and good, but it is a wider societal problem, and we're really keen to work with government and others to help address those issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, happy to take questions.
Is this go far enough to actually addressing that issue and what's actually causing the spike?
It's a significant announcement that we're making today, but alongside that is the work that the South Auckland Social Wellbeing Board is doing to address why young people are getting into this in the first place.
There's been a number of businesses lately being hit where bollards haven't been enough to prevent a car getting through.
Well, if you're talking about excavators, yes, that's definitely, a bollard is not going to stop an excavator, but we are seeing crime that is much lower level than that. And to be clear, bollards are not the only solution. So the proof of concept sites are really important to assess a range of measures that could go in place to support.
Minister, on our recent spate of shootings, what's your expectation as far as where that's going?
Could we leave the shootings questions till after this? We want to get through the ramraid matter first, and then I'm really happy to answer questions. I just don't want to hold up these two gentlemen any longer than we should.
We're not just talking about figures, we're also talking about Ormiston. It's a big complex.
Yeah.
Bollards are going to be
So this fund is to support retailers just like Mr. Singh here. We're talking about smaller retailers who may not. Well, that's a different matter. We're talking about vulnerable retailers who may not have the resource to do that. Talking about who may not have the resource to do that. A mall is a different proposition. We're talking about small businesses who've had it tough, you know, particularly during COVID, and we want to do what we can to support them to operate safely.
Just for clarity, is this $6 million in addition to the 600 almost that was announced?
Absolutely. This has come from the Proceeds of Crime Fund, which is different to the budget announcement.
When does the trial finish? How long will that last?
Well, that's over to you, Matt.
It's a proof of concept, these 5 sites, so they will be started as early as next week. There'll be assessments made on some of those sites there across Greater Auckland, from Pukekohe all the way up to here in North and everywhere in between. So those things with the installers will happen in the coming weeks, and then it'll be rolled out essentially from there.
So quite quickly, people do get it down.
Yeah, pretty quickly, certainly for the first 5 initial stores. At the same time that we're working with those first 5 stores, we'll look to identify, as the Minister announced, the 500 other stores that police want to work with. That process will take several weeks or so to identify those, and then we'll look to make contact with those stores as and when we can.
For those small stores that don't really have bollards and slow machines, how does this announcement reassure them that you've been looked after here?
So that's the beauty of this announcement. It's wide enough to cover a multiple range of different options. Bollards are not the be-all and end-all, and in fact, a lot of occasions we can't actually install bollards into footpaths because of the infrastructure that's actually underneath them. So we need to look at other options like planter boxes and concrete bollards, concrete boxes and concrete other options as well that can help there. We will need to look at each individual case as a bespoke option. If they've already got a fog cannon, then we can install things like a strobe light or a sound bar that emits a really high-pitched sound that makes it uncomfortable. We can have a full sit-set approach, full crime prevention through environmental design, look at lowering shelf height so we can see through the store, removing things from the front windows so you can see into the stores. So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach, that's for sure.
Minister, you said that your role as police minister is to ensure that police have all the right resources in order
Exactly.
to do these sort of things. Why has policy not been looked at as something that might need to change to ensure that they're able to actually crack down on these crimes?
So I didn't catch the last policy.
Why has policy not been looked at as something that could change to help police be able to actually crack down on these?
Well, that's incorrect. Policy has been developed. Part of the package that we announced was $94 million to look at gang harm, but to keep young people out of criminal activity in the first place, alongside of the work that the Social Wellbeing Board is doing to support whānau, to keep our kids out of criminal activity in the first place. So there are pieces of work happening alongside this.
Logistically, how do businesses apply for help and support? Do they call the police? They can approach the government? How does this actually work?
Matt.
So we've had experience with other operations like this, such as the fog cannon operation, and we've found the best way is that the police actually select those individual businesses through a criteria around previous victimisations and vulnerability. So rather than them applying, we will make the approach to them.
So it's more kind of responsive. So if a business gets hit, then the police will help support them. It's not a preemptive measure.
That's one of the measures, yes.
A number of businesses, when they get hit, they say that the more measures they have in place for security just means more damages, and really the thing that they want to focus on is the consequences for those who are perpetrating those crimes.
That's exactly right.
What, if you can specify what things are being done to in that space,
yep.
and also what's being done to tell business owners that there is really actually
Yeah.
something.
So I point to Operation Prior, which has made over 150 arrests. There are 750 charges in train at the moment. So arrests are being made.
For young offenders, because obviously we're seeing quite young offenders with
Well,
these
yes, if you want to have a look at the details of Operation Prior, yes, that is the case.
So we just said that Harvard say that this crime's got more organised, it's happening more, it's more violent. What's been happening up there?
Well, $562 million to support the police. What we have been doing as a government is rebuilding the police. More numbers, more resources, better training to ensure that they can be as responsive as they need to be. And the ability to use the proceeds of crime for this particular issue has been one of the ways that we've been able to respond.
Quick question for Greg, just in terms of this announcement, do you feel like retailers are going to be satisfied with this as a response to the issues that we've been seeing?
Look, I think this is a good, solid announcement today. Obviously, there's always more that can be done, and it is a bit of an iterative process. I think we've seen the establishment of the National Retail Investigation Support Unit over the last few months. That's something we've been campaigning for since 2016, so it's taken a long time. But it's great news that it's in action. It's great news that it's out there. It's making arrests. Some of the larger retailers certainly are looking at what they're doing to help combat these crime issues directly. There are some massive investments going in from some of those businesses in terms of hardening up their infrastructure to help defend themselves against the criminal activity. But ultimately, I think everyone in the retail sector is really keen to see a conversation nationally about what we can do to actually stop these situations happening in the first place, looking at the causes of that.
Greg, do you have an expectation that that $6 million will be added to if necessary?
Look, that's not a conversation I've had with the Minister yet, but obviously I think if there is a need for more funding, that's certainly something we'd want to be talking to the Minister
How
about.
far does $6 million go? Like how many shops can get this installed?
Well, we're looking at initial flush of 500 stores to be
So
supported.
it's about $12,000
Well, and remember, there will be a range of measures. So some will have, alarms, perhaps, or some may have fog cannons. There'll be a range of measures depending on what the needs of the retailer are.
You were talking a bit about consent, it's a bit hard to put bollards in some places because council consent is needed.
Yeah.
Any conversations about getting that taken?
Well, I know that Auckland City, for example, are doing a piece of work in that regard, and part of the beauty of having the support unit is those conversations will be happening alongside with Retail NZ, will be happening with local authorities about what can be installed.
How long does the $6 million last for?
Well, it'll last for about 500 retail outlets.
So when that goes,
Yeah.
what happens?
Well, hopefully we will have conversations with retail stores, and they will be happy with the work that's happening. You may know that with fog cannons we started with an initial flush, but those conversations, I'm not going to commit the government to future funding, but I'm, if it makes sense, that may be something that we look at continuing, because in terms of an intervention it's relatively inexpensive, and it's a great way to partner with, police to partner with business.
Can I just go back to what Kerry was saying? How do retailers apply? Do they have to get rolled first before they can get these measures put in place?
Well, it's similar to what happened around fog cannons. The eligibility criteria will be similar to that, and retailers understand that mechanism, and it really will be the police to decide who they choose to partner with. And they will look at their vulnerability as well as what might have happened in the past.
So there could be a lot of retailers that miss out on this because they don't meet the criteria? Is that it?
We know from experience that these retailers that are unfortunately victims of crime are usually repeat victims of crime. So, focusing on those initial retailers first just makes sense, because there's obviously a reason as to why they were initially targeted. So they make a good place to start, that's for sure.
What about the retailers that want to put preventative measures in before they get targeted, before they get ramraided and have all of their shops destroyed? Is there any options for them?
Well, as Matt has said, if they have been previously, there may have been burglaries, for example, if they may have been targeted in that way. But it'll be. We were looking at 500, this is a significant announcement, and we want to support the most vulnerable of our retailers. That's a good place for us to start.
Can I just add to that though, Minister? There are a lot of things that retailers can already be doing, and there's a lot of tools and resources already available through organisations like Retail NZ to help them harden up their premises and do a better job. So there is already some support there available, driven by the sector.
Yeah.
How many small retailers have been attacked over the last year or so? We're just trying to get last 500 retailers.
Yes.
How
Particularly with ramraids, there have been, in the past, it didn't happen very, very often, but we know that there have been about 40 a month over the last few months. So it's definitely something that is spiking, and, that's why we've come to the party with a package to support retailers. Yeah. I guess so we can let you. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Greg. Thank you for that.
About 10 minutes, yeah? And then we're going to wind up.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, sure. So, Minister,
Yeah, great.
on our gang shootings,
Yes.
recent spate of shootings, what's your expectation as far as frequency is concerned over the next days and weeks?
Look, I can't really speak to that. What I can speak to is conversations I've been having with police to say how deeply distressed I am that these are happening. And I know that the police are actively working across not just Tamaki, Makaurau, but in Northland as well.
Now, in terms of the cause of this tension, what further information do you have on the understanding that it was caused by a gang member bringing a firearm to a rugby league track?
Well, I know. Look, I can't speak to the specifics of it, and that will be as investigators are dealing with it. But I know that there have been tensions between these two gangs in the past. That this is stuff that has been simmering for years, and it's really unfortunate that it is playing out now across our city and Northland in this way. And I have expectations that the police will do their job to not only bring this to conclusion, but that they will be successful in the prosecutions that they take as well.
What have the conversations been like with police? Have they asked for anything specific to help support police?
Well, police have got the resources through the Firearms Investigation Unit, the Organised Crime Unit, and we've been building the police in terms of their resource and their funding and their numbers to deal with just these situations. So I'm confident the police will get on top of this. It is very distressing for our communities, and we want order to be restored so everyone can feel safe again.
How do we get the guns off the gangs?
How do we get
How do we get the guns off the gangs?
Well, there are a number of ways. The police have been had a couple of successful operations, Tauwhiro, which has moved into Cobalt, but the fact that we have got specific funding for not only a firearms investigation unit, which has been, GunSafe tells us 10,000 weapons have been taken off the streets in 3 years, but we also have the firearms register, which will give us the certainty and confidence that we know where firearms are located and how they're being dispersed through the community.
But a gang member's going to register firearms?
No, and that's not the point. And the point is, from the point that we have the register, we will know, we will have much stronger controls over who has a licence, how they purchase, how they store, how they secure, and how firearms are dispersed. We've got a 30-year deficit of information in that space. That clearly makes us unsafe because we don't know who has what and what they're doing with those firearms.
We've got a gang rehab leader today tell New South that the number of or gang recruitment is now outstripping police recruitment. What do you say to that?
I say record 14,000 cops. I say 1,800 extra under this government is how we're responding to that. And we've put in a population ratio, so we never have fewer than one police officer for every 480 Kiwis. I think that's a strong response, and also record budget, record investment into police, so that not only do they have the numbers, but they have the tools and the resources and the training they need.
But is that accurate though, to your knowledge, that gang recruitment is outstripping police recruitment?
I don't know, and the information that we have is inaccurate, and I've said all along that the National Gangs List, for example, is a intel tool for police.
So essentially we don't know.
But I would say the police have got a sense of what's happening, and they've asked for the resource, and we've been able to provide it to them.
So just in terms of your expectations, I think Aucklanders in particular deserve to know whether you as Minister think that this activity is going to increase, decrease or stay the same, or is it just the case that you don't know?
What I do know is that the police are actively investigating at the moment. They've already started to make arrests. What I'm really hopeful will happen is that arrests will happen quickly and that those prosecutions will be successful and it will take people off the streets.
Should the public expect a decrease?
Absolutely, they should. They should expect a decrease in this escalation, and that's what police are working towards. That is my assurance to the people of Auckland.
So have the shootings this week or anything in recent months changed your stance on federal arming for police?
No, it hasn't. One of the things that we have supported through our funding is the tactical response model, which trains far more police to AOS level, and it means that they have on-shift capability, but it also means they have access to firearms when the most significant issues happen, such as what is happening right now. General arming changes the relationship that a community has with its police, and I for one don't support it. The Commissioner is the one who makes those decisions. He doesn't support it, neither does the National Party.
There were more than 70% of the police force wishing that they were criminally armed.
As I say, the Commissioner, whose role it is to make these decisions, doesn't support it, neither did the previous one, neither do the National Party, and I certainly don't.
Will we expect to see more of those temporary arming periods over the next days or weeks?
They will happen when police feel they need to give communities assurance, but what I can tell you is where we've had the concept sites for the tactical response models, they have been successful in reducing the numbers of temporary carriage orders.
Last couple of questions, guys.
What briefings are you getting from police about these shootings and how often are those briefings?
I'm talking to the police every day.
What are you hearing from them? Sorry, you have spoken to police. What are they hearing from the ground in terms of support that they need to fight this?
Well, what I'm hearing from police is that they're grateful for the resource that they've got. They're grateful for the training that they're getting. We just need to roll this out. You know, we are 4 or 5 years of deficit in the police in terms of numbers and funding, so we just need to keep working on it.
Would you say police have control over this situation, or is there a bit of a spiral?
Well, they are starting to make arrests. We have to let the police do their job. The investigations have to happen and they have to be thorough so that we can make sure that those arrests are made and that those prosecutions stick.
The police say, and you say, that these tensions have been simmering away for years. Is that disappointing that it has been allowed to simmer for years? There's been no way to get on top of this before things.
What I should qualify that by is referring to what Councillor Al Filippina said yesterday, which is that the community have been working to broker relationships between those two, and they have been successful. From time to time, as is happening currently, the tensions have spiralled to the point where we are seeing what's happening. But, you know, I'm really confident that we can, through the work the police are doing and our community partners, get on top of this.
The mayor thinks it could be only a matter of time before someone's seriously injured.
Oh, that would be dreadful. That would be dreadful. So we really do need to work with some pace to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Do you think that someone could die if this isn't?
Look, that would be the worst nightmare. I would hope that that wouldn't happen. So I'm really hopeful that the police will work hard to restore calm to our communities.
Cool, thanks guys.